What's happening, big dogs? Back at you again. Even on Labor Day weekend at Big Dogs, we are grinding. We're here for another episode of Market Watch Mondays. There's some pretty interesting topics I want to cover today. But before we do that, you know what time it is, baby. Hit that motherfucking intro.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
All right, this week on Market Watch Monday, I want to talk about a topic that's been floating around Twitter. If you follow me, you'll probably see me engaging back and forth on it, and it's outliers, right? And, everyone in fantasy wants to chase the outlier. They want to get the next Tyreek Hill. They want to get the next, David Johnson, in this case with Antonio Gibson. And I really wanted to cover this topic because, one, it gives you some insight into my process and how I think about outliers and how I approach it. But two, more importantly, I think it's important because, it's the hottest name in fantasy right now, and it's Antonio Gibson. And if he hits, he will become one of the ultimate outliers, just given his lack of touches and lack of production at the college level. Granted, like, if you guys follow Big Dogs, you know that we've been on Antonio Gibson since before the combine. Like, we told you to get in on this guy even before he was drafted. So we're big fans of his, but again, we are always considering the cost and the price to acquire a player on your team. So we know now Adrian Peterson has been released by the Redskins, which honestly was pretty surprising to me because I thought they were going to just grind this guy to the death, and they actually fed him. And especially with Geis gone, it felt like it was probably Adrian Peterson going to be taking that early down grinding work, and Antonio Gibson would pull up the rear with receiving down work. Now, with AP gone, that could mean a couple of things, right? It could mean that, yes, Antonio Gibson is the dude, and the coaches love him. They think he's that workhorse role. I don't really think that's likely. What I think is probably more, I guess, more. Why am I freaking blanking on words here? What's more probable is that they probably like a little bit what they see in Bryce Love as well. Bryce Love was someone that produced the college level. I think he's a Jag. I don't think he's that good, to be honest, but they probably like what they see in that youngster and probably want to give him a shot. It's not like they're going to be a competitive team anyways. Might as well see what you got. But also, it does show some confidence in Antonio Gibson. I mean, they've talked this guy up the entire time from when they drafted him, like Scott Turner, when he came over. Like, they wanted this guy, right? They took him at in the second pick in the third round, which is not cheap at all. Like, that is a pretty expensive investment. Honestly, when I saw that, I was pretty surprised, even as a Gibson fan, just because of how limited he was at the college level. But they clearly saw a skill set they wanted, and they got it, and now he's on the team. So now, what does this mean for Antonio Gibson? We said he would be an outlier if he hits, right? When we told you back in April to draft him, the reason why we told you to draft him was because we felt he was undervalued at his third round rookie price tag, right? At his late set. We said to reach up and get him in the late second round if you wanted to. And look, people take a lot of victory laps in the offseason, and most of them are unwarranted. I think that this one is because, like, what you can do is, like, you can take a value victory lap, right? You can cash out on Antonio Gibson now before anything even happens. And I think that, like, automatic profit is like what we play for in Dynasty, right? That's what I play for, at least. Like, the reason why I try to bet on these guys is because I think there's going to be immediate value return in the near term that I can capitalize on. So am I all out on Antonio Gibson? No, I'm probably still going to keep a couple of shares that I got of him in the offseason, because when you acquired him for a third round pick, you can afford to bet on that upside, right? You can afford to wait and see what happens, because on the downside, it's like, look, it didn't really cost me that much, but you can also cash out now on, like, first round picks. And that's honestly what I've been seeing a lot of people get for him. I think, like, if you test the markets in your leagues, that is a very realistic possibility of getting a future first or a first round equivalent for him. Someone like a Justin Jefferson, who hasn't been getting the rave reviews in camp, someone like a Jalen Reagor, who is injured, someone like even that tier down of wide receivers that I really like T. Higgins, Laviska Shenault, Brian Edwards. These are all guys that I actually, probably still would consider trading Antonio Gibson for, but you can cash out now, right? Now is the time where you've kind of took that gamble with us when we told you to take it, and now you have the opportunity to cash out.
Catch me outside. How about that?
In my opinion, that is the optimal path of betting on an outlier, is cashing out on market sentiment and value creation before you even have to test your hypothesis of whether or not they will be successful in the NFL. And that is my favorite type of cash out, and I do it all the time. And that really comes back around to like betting on outliers, right? When do you bet on outliers? Everyone loves to bet on outliers, and like I had a couple back and forth with people coming to me like, well, what about Terry McLaurin? What about, like all these guys? Like Terry McLaurin is the example that I hit with the most. Like, well, why do you use analytics when analytics could not identify Terry McLaurin? And I threw up a tweet, and I hope it was clear, but like, let me make something abundantly clear live if it's not already clear. An analytical based approach is not made to identify outliers. That's not what the fundamental principles of analytics is based on. Analytical approaches at its core is to use numbers and data to help you increase your hit rates by weeding out the busts. So by fading busts, that's how you inherently increase your rates. So by fading guys with poor collegiate profiles, you basically, by taking those guys off your board, it increases your chances of hitting because you're selecting players from a smaller pool of higher likelihood hits. That is the entire basis of analytics. Analytics is not meant to find guys like Terry McLaurin. Like, no analytics person will be like, hey, I have a 100% hit rate, and I'm gonna tell you and find out who all the outliers are. So like whenever I get into debates with people about analytics and they start pulling out these like outliers, I'm like, hey, like that's totally fine. Like when I employ an analytics based approach, I am completely okay with missing out on outliers, because it means for every one of those outliers that I miss on, I also fade way more busts. So in the long run, in terms of draft capital invested, it's just way better for me because I don't sink that type of cost in there. And like I had some back and forth today, and someone who's well respected in the industry and someone I follow for a long time, Sigmund Bloom, responded with a tweet, and I'll throw it up on screen. But he basically said something to the tune of, well, we know that if analytics is not the tool to use to identify outliers, you still must agree that like incorporating identifying outliers in your process should still be done, right? And I have to think about this one a bit. I'm like, is it? And like the conclusion I reached is that like, no, not necessarily, right? Because what I'm saying is, because I employ an analytics based approach, I'm okay with missing outliers. I don't want to chase those outliers because, as far as I've seen, I've yet to see anyone or any process achieve consistent success in chasing outliers. Because the reason why they're outliers is because we don't know what to look for. Like there isn't a recipe for success for picking out guys like Tyreek Hill or Julian Edelman, and those guys don't come around very often. For every Tyreek Hill, there's like 5 or 6 other mega busts. For every Terry McLaurin, there's like 10 to 20 other mega busts of someone of his profile, right? So I responded, and I think this really sums up. It made me think, and that's why it was interesting. But it really sums up like my approach to fantasy football is I'm okay with missing on, and I'm missing on some of those outliers entirely. And the reason why I'm okay with it is because when they do hit somewhat in the NFL, take Terry McLaurin for example, you can still acquire him for a very, very reasonable price. Like even if you think back to like Tyreek Hill, right after he had his like semi breakout in year one, he could still be acquired for a very reasonable price. So I've tailored my approach to kind of like looking at after the NFL, after year one, what some of these guys look like. And I'll pay the premium, the semi premium, to buy high, as people say, to capitalize on that value before they skyrocket. And that kind of brings me back to another tweet, which, I said it before, but I really like buying high on players. Everyone you talk to is always thinking about buy low, buy low. Like in a market like fantasy football that is like almost entirely driven by like pure emotion and like complete knee-jerk reactions, like very little like fundamental sound analysis that determines player value, to be honest with you. In a market like that, trying to play the buy low game, like in the stock market where you're trying to catch a falling knife and like trading these penny stocks, it can really burn you, right? So what I prefer to do is find good players, right? And we preach this at BDG all the time. Draft good guys. Don't always draft for value. Like draft good players at the end of the day. For sometimes, like there's a reason why some players are viewed as good value or buy lows, and it's a lot of times because they stink.
Boo! You stink!
When you come back to it, it's all about identifying good players. And for me, that's one, fading outlier prospects, like especially at the high end of the cost, right? Like if you're taking shots on outliers for third round, like late second, like that's all fine because the hit rates at those rounds are so low already, right? But I just cannot get myself to invest a first round pick in a guy who would be an outlier if he succeeded. Someone like a Henry Ruggs, someone like a Michael Pittman Jr. these are guys that the community loves that I have zero stock in, right? I have zero stock in them, and I'm totally okay with missing on them if they hit, because I've seen those profiles bust so many times before. Like, so many times those guys bust. And like, there honestly hasn't been someone like a Henry Ruggs that has found success with his college production profile. So in the off chance that he does succeed, I will fully own that L. And I'm telling you right now, like, if Henry Ruggs blows up, like, all the power to him. And I will have missed on him. I will always miss on guys like that. And other analytical guys will also recognize that they miss on guys like that. That's part of the process. That's the weakness in the analytical approach, is that it does not identify outliers. But the strength is you do not burn or light your draft capital on fire drafting guys like John Ross and all these dudes that like don't have the prerequisite collegiate profile to find success in the NFL. So I'm trying to give you guys a little bit of insight to how I think so that you can apply it to your dynasty leagues. It's like, as interesting as it is for us to tell you like what players we like and, you know, who to target in your drafts, at the end of the day, like the purpose of this entire Market Watch Sunday is not just to show you what I think the values are and where I think the values would go. It's to like teach you the concepts and the underlying principles I use so that you can do it for yourself. So you don't need to watch my video to say, hey, you should buy Jalen Reagor, or you should invest in you know, like Miles Sanders or like these guys before they break out, right? You'll be able to identify that yourself because you'll be able to employ the same processes that I employ. And when it comes down to it, it's avoiding outliers, right? Of employing an analytical approach to reduce the pool of candidates that I draft from to higher likelihood hit successes. And when you do that, it 100%, without a doubt, increases your odds of hitting and makes you a better fantasy player. And you have to employ it. And the second part of that is to buy high. Don't be afraid to buy high. Like, could you imagine if you were someone that faded Amazon stock after the 2018 steady 2018 rise, only to miss out on the rest of the gains? Like that, to me, like that's the very simple process and example that I can come up with to like explain to someone why buying high is not a bad thing. Like, sure, someone else might have capitalized on the gains from, you know, year 1 to year 3, but you're going to capitalize on the gains from year 3 to year 5. And if the stock looks like this up to year 3 and then this up to year 5, like, you're golden, right? And that's why I buy high all the time. Like every off season, I pick a couple guys that I think are risers, and they've already risen a bit, but I think they're gonna skyrocket next year. And I make big bets on them. I will overpay in trades. I'll just like lead out heavy, hot and heavy with like big offers to try and acquire these players, almost making offers that these guys cannot refuse.
I'm going to make him an offer he can't refuse.
So I did that last season with DJ Moore when people thought that he was too expensive in like the 5th round. I was offering like things like Marlon Mack plus Chris Carson for DJ Moore, right? And this was before the season started. So Marlon Mack was viewed as a starter, Chris Carson viewed as a starter. I was offering both of them up for DJ Moore, and I got that trade done. And now, like, you'd be lucky if you could get DJ Moore for Carson, Mack plus a first. I don't even think you get that, to be honest with you. But like, you know what I mean? Like at the time, I'm okay with buying high. I'm okay with overpaying if I make a bet on a player that I have really good and high convictions for. So avoid outliers, buy high on players, combine those things together, and it is a recipe for dynasty success. And like, if you want proof, like I can show you my rosters that I've built over the last 2 to 3 years by making these types of big bets and by employing this process. But like, I promise you, it will make you a better fantasy player. Like if you were a self-proclaimed film grinder, or you like watching YouTube highlights, whatever type of scout that you think you are, take some of that time and try and understand the data. Like, it always blows my mind because like I have a ton of respect for film grinders that can do it really well. Guys like Jetpack Galileo, guys like at Jay Moyer on Twitter. Those are two of the most respected film grinders that I know. And Jetpack Galileo actually does numbers as well. But what blows my mind is like 90% of film grinders just avoid analytics. They're like, okay, I just want to trust my eyes. Tape never lies. Like blah 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 blah. Like it's like that. Just like that concept is so stupid to me. Like I can't even like think of another word because like I cannot be a film grinder. I do not have the prerequisite skills. I do not have the time to actually invest to do film grinding properly and film review properly. Like I cannot do what Jay Moyer does. I cannot do what Jetpack does on his film. I cannot do what Ray Garvin does. I am not a film grinder. I never pretend to be a film expert. I don't even pretend to be a fantasy analyst. I'm just a fucking dude that talks football, right? But at the end of the day, like all those guys can take the analytics of it. Like the analytics is so easy. It's like basic algebra and like just like literally basic multiplication division. You can employ all the analytical concepts. And if you don't want to do the math yourself, you have guys like Peter Howdy doing it for you for free. You got guys like, RotoViz, like a great tool and resource. You have Player Profiler, a great tool and resource. You can literally just go up and pull the numbers and put it into a spreadsheet. Like it just blows my mind that like it can go one way. Like film grinders can easily become and incorporate analytics, but it's not so easy for analytics to incorporate film grinders. But like the best players I play against are more analytics based, and like film grinders just willingly give up that advantage. That just blows my mind. Like, can you imagine a world where you just like ignore data that is proven predictive success and help you make you a better fantasy player? And people are like, nah, like I don't want that. I'll just grind film. Thank you very much. I'll trust my eyes. Like tape don't lie. Like fuck that, man. Like take all the data that you can and really incorporate it. Don't be that guy that like turns a blind eye to data because it doesn't like, line up with your preconceived biases and what you think of a player. Like as an analytics person, there are guys that I love and I still rely on film because I think the best things happen when both film and analytics align. That's why I follow a lot of film guys because I know I'm not good at it. Follow guys and learn from people that are stronger at the things than you are, and that is the only way that you can get better at this game. Trust me, dude. Following a bunch of guys that circle jerk each other and like the same shit does nothing for you. It does absolutely nothing for you. I love getting into debates with people on Twitter who I disagree with because I learn something new every time. That is the goal of fantasy. You should always be aiming to get better. And I'm sorry that I kind of like went off on a bit of a tangent, but all this shit just came to me, and I think it's like really valuable for you guys to understand this. And like you really got to incorporate both sides of the coin. Okay. You have to have analytics as part of your tool set when evaluating fantasy. Okay. It's like, it's so easy to employ. Don't be that film grinder that just like willingly gives up his edge. Like in poker, like as a gambler, as a poker player, like we never give up edges. Like edges are so valuable to come by and they're so rare. That's why you never give them up. So it's just like every time I think about this, it just blows my fucking mind that people are willingly giving up a free edge they have. Where like if you're a film grinder and you also understand analytics, you dominate this game. That's it. If you're a film grinder, you understand analytics and you understand game theory, you dominate this game. Like I will not beat someone that is as good as me in analytics but also knows film because I do think film has value. So be that guy. Like I can't be that guy, but if you start off in film, trust me when I say this, you can come to analytics and you want to be the guy that uses both because the most successful guys that I've seen in this game, the best players I've played against use both. And, guys like Ray GQ, the thing I love about Ray is he's like always trying to learn, right? Like he came from a film background. He played football in college, like at a competitive level, but he is always asking questions about analytics. He's trying to learn and incorporate that into his process because he recognizes the benefit of it, right? So be the person that's willing to learn because they will guarantee to make you a better fantasy player. So look, that's my 2 cents, a little bit of ramble, probably a little bit different from your Market Watch Mondays, not as much player analysis, but I think what I'm going to be doing going forward is incorporating more process related thoughts and how I think about stuff. Because when I've been sharing that type of stuff on Twitter, I get a lot of engagement. And that's like, it seems like that's what like people want a lot of. And at the end of the day, like, what's that old saying? Like you give a man a fish, feed him a day, you teach a man to fish and, you feed him for a lifetime. Like that's what I'm trying to do, right? I'm trying to give you guys the processes, the tools, the frame of mind that I go through when I play fantasy because I want you guys to succeed, right? That's at the end of the day, that's what I want. I want, I'm happy when people, DM me their championship teams and say, hey, like, thanks for helping me get there. Like, I love that. There's nothing more I love than watching and helping my followers win. At the end of the day, that's my fucking goal. That should be your goal. That should be your goal this year, next year, every single year. But along the way, get better. If you're just lucking in the championships by doing what other people tell you, you're not getting better. And you got to get better. I'm constantly trying to get better as a podcaster, as a fantasy player, just as a person in general. Like you should always be striving to learn. And there's so many opportunities to learn for you. For those of you, especially in the film space, if you got questions, just ask, man. Just ask. There's so many smart guys on Twitter, analytics people that are willing to share their process because it's like not some like secret thing, right? So analytics is easy. Sum it all up. Antonio Gibson, ultimate outlier if he hits, and he's a bet that we love to make. But now you should be looking to cash out some of your stock. Not 100% because he could still be that David Johnson. There's that chance that at the end of the day, you basically took on risk-free profit without even seeing a player play. And those are the types of situations you dream for, right? Number 2, fade outliers. Do not build a process around trying to chase outliers, and fade the noise of people saying, look, I hit on this outlier, you should follow on me. Like, I've yet to see a single person that consistently hits on outliers. If you're out there, please DM me. I'm interested in your process. But fade outliers and do not build a process chasing them, because it is a negative EV proposition. I promise you that. Okay. And 3, you got to buy high on players, and don't be scared to buy high. Don't be scared to buy high. Don't be scared to invest in Amazon after it's had a run. Don't be scared to invest in the Teslas after they had a run, because at the end of the day, you're trying to invest in good companies. You're trying to invest in good players as well, right? And last of all, just make sure you learn, man. If you're a film grinder, please, please, please incorporate analytics into your process, because that is the surefire way to win. That's all for this week. Hope you guys enjoyed. It's a bit of a longer one, I know, but hopefully there's a lot of nuggets in there that you guys will learn from going forward and hopefully incorporate into your process. Be on the lookout for the main episode of BBB Weekly. Make sure you follow me at Mike Me Up with 2 P's on Twitter. Follow my co-host at FB God, and make sure you subscribe below to the channel. Give us a thumbs up. It's a huge help. And if you're listening on iTunes, leave us a review. It's really helpful. And again, just leave some comments for things you want to see. Give us feedback. The season's coming up, so give us some ideas for content. We are men of the people. So what you want to see, we will do our best to cater to it. So again, thanks for tuning in. Make sure you follow us. Make sure you subscribe. Make sure you watch all the videos. And I'll see you next week for another episode of Market Watch.